Hello, my name is Tracy Trott. Welcome to my channel, Breaking the Disabled Mindset. On this video, I will be discussing what my journey was like having a son born with spina bifida from birth to his current age of 30. My future vlogs will be on Darren's accomplishments and where he is today in life. So have a watch and learn a lot about Darren's life living disabled. The hope is that our videos motivate and encourage individuals to press on and reach for their goals. Please subscribe as we will be posting videos on Darren's life regularly and you wouldn't want to miss out.
I was thinking about when did I first meet you, right? Because I've seen you around, I've seen you a lot, in St. George's, we're familiar with the same people.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really until I taught Darren that I actually saw you.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like,
Yes.
you know how you see people, but then you really see them?
Yes.
So I really
Yeah,
saw
yeah.
you as a parent to your son, right? And I was like, whoa. I was like, this is a task. And then I was like, but this little boy is thriving. The amount of independence that he had, and that doesn't happen by accident, right? Because children thrive when they have a lot of support. But you weren't that parent that was a helicopter. Like you weren't there every 5 minutes. You know what I mean? You were there when it was necessary, when it was important to support him, right?
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that too, because sometimes you got people, the helicopter parents that fly in all the time.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, yes.
And it
Especially
makes
when they got
it-
special needs.
Yeah, and it kind of makes you feel like, okay, am I doing the right thing? Even as a teacher, like, am I navigating this? Is parent pleased with what I'm doing?
Yeah.
But when everybody's on an even keel and it's like the parent feels safe, they feel comfortable, they get to a place where they come when it's necessary and important, right? And that's how I saw you, as this really supportive parent
Mhm.
who let her son be independent in his journey, especially his academic journey, right?
Yes.
And you didn't put any limits on him, because I remember when we went to Paget Island, it was a huge concern for us, like, how are we going to get Darren over Paget Island? How is he going to navigate this? Da, da, da. Darren came like everybody else, and then he figured out for himself,
Right.
nah, it's not for me.
Right, yes.
Right? And that's his choice, because as
Yeah.
we grow, we learn what we like and what we don't like, right?
Yeah.
But he took it on.
Yes.
You didn't say, no, I don't want my son go overnight, or I don't want my son go at all. You let him explore that, and help him to explore himself as a person,
Mhm.
and then getting to this point where now we actually are colleagues.
Yes.
It's
Yes,
like,
yes,
so
yes.
I see you. I see
Yes.
you. So let's talk about Darren and
Okay.
how early in Darren's life did you want to start? Like, let's talk about when you found out you was pregnant.
Let's go to the beginning.
Yeah.
Yes, I was eight months pregnant when I got an ultrasound, and it detected that something was happening, but they couldn't pinpoint exactly what was happening. So I really didn't have any information. I just knew something was not normal, or something was going on with the baby I was carrying. So my doctor immediately knew that picking up this in my 8th month, that Bermuda obviously cannot handle this child being born with whatever is going to be born with. So he immediately started to look at overseas hospitals that were equipped to deal with, I guess, because we didn't know any baby that came out and needed immediate medical attention. And at that point, I was sent to Tufts New England Medical Center in Boston.
Okay.
And I had never heard of that hospital before.
Me either.
Never heard of anything about the hospital. Just sent me to that hospital, and at that time I was working for Marriott. So myself and my mother, who flew up with me immediately, stayed at the Marriott for the entire time that we were up there, before and after the baby was born. So that was a great help. So once we got to Boston, it was like we stayed at the hotel, but we traveled to the doctor's office that was over at Tufts New England Medical. And I knew that, I found out that when Darren was born, that's when they'll be able to determine what the baby was going to be born with. At that point, I'm just over 8 months, getting ready to have this baby. So they come with a date, and they say, this is the date that your baby is going to be born. So March 8th was the day that Darren was born, 1995. And he came into this world, and it's amazing. Nobody knew what Darren was going to be born with. My doctor didn't know who I was dealing with out in Boston, but around the emergency birthing room, you had teams of doctors. Right, so you had maybe if the baby was born with spina bifida or something different, then the team of doctors come over and will deal with the baby for what's needed. So Darren was born with spina bifida. So the team of doctors was a neurologist, a urologist that was immediately in the room. So once Darren was born, he was handed over to Dr. Kyle Heilman, who's his neurologist, and his urologist was Dr. Clubber.
Right.
So
I just want to stop you right here
Okay.
and ask you, like, what exactly is spina bifida?
Well, spina bifida is where someone is born with the opening up their back, like over the spine. My son's was lower on his back, so immediately at birth or whatever, however minutes after, it was stitched up.
Okay.
And it was closed. And that's when the doctors then determined, okay, is he able to drain the fluid from his head, or all these things able to happen being his born with spina bifida. I guess past shows that babies born with spina bifida need a lot of medical attention. So Darren, Dr. Heilman was there, and I would never forget that Dr. Heilman walked up to next to my bed, and as he started to talk to me, I just couldn't even process what he was saying, because I'm looking at this doctor that looked like he was 19 years old telling me about my son he's going to do surgery on, and he's going to be able to put a shunt in, and Darren's going to live a normal life. And he showed me the shunt and how it was going to work. And I'm looking at him saying, oh my goodness, this young man's only 19, 20. What is he talking about? And showing me everything he's going to do, right? And with a team of doctors with him. Yeah. So Darren went off and had that surgery done, and was very successful. So Darren lives basically a normal life with a shunt, and that's because his neurologist make sure that everything with Darren is his shunt's equipped, everything's working well, and we still go up to visit him every other year, right?
Okay, so explain to us what a shunt is and what it's supposed to do for the child,
right?
Or children who have them, or people that have them.
Yes.
And yeah.
So a shunt is a device that assists with draining the fluid from the head. So it can be either in the front or the back of the head. Some people have it in the front, some people have it in the back. And it's not just for babies born who have fluid on the head. Any individual that's been in an accident and it's been trauma to the head, then the doctors, if he cannot or she cannot continue to drain the fluid by themselves, then they put that in to assist, because you never want to build up a fluid on your head that will causes a lot of damage for the brain. So it was always where you always make sure your shunt's working. I just want to touch on and go back to Darren. Once we were authorized to leave Boston, we wasn't authorized to leave Boston right away. Darren had to be a doctor in Bermuda that was trained and equipped to work with a baby with a shunt, and probably some of the medical attention Darren needed. And I remember the doctor coming to me and saying, Miss Trott, we're looking for a doctor in Bermuda that's able to deal with Darren. And I'm like, oh, okay. Then he was like, it's not a big thing, but I just want to know if something happens that somebody's there. So he said, but and unless we find a doctor, you're not going to be able to leave and take him back to Bermuda. Wow. And I'm immediately saying, what? So again, go back to when he was born, I'm processing a lot. I'm processing, I'm thinking, and if we go back to when Darren was first born, because I want to make sure everyone understands that I went through a ball of emotions. The emotions were very strong. My mother was with me. She's a Christian, and she, always speaks, the Lord don't give you no more than you can bear. And it was hard to process that I had a disabled son. I was just 21, and I'm being told I have going through this journey of on the process of having to fly to Boston is real. Yes. The baby's born and he has spina bifida. It's real. I have to face this is real. Yes. So I think I went through a lot of emotions. Some of the emotions, if I could be honest, and I think I've discussed this with my colleagues, and I tell people, and when I'm explaining my walk, and I'm honest, I was angry at God for a few days, a few weeks. I was angry because I'm like, why me? why? I don't understand. Why me? Like, what's going on? And then I would never forget, I was in the NICU unit because that's where babies go when they're born and they have some sort of emergencies that they need attended to. And the phone rang, and it was, the nurse says, you know, the phone's for you. So I went and took the phone, and it was my brother-in-law, Lawrence. And I would never forget the conversation. He probably doesn't even remember the conversation he had with me on that phone. But honestly, when I got off the phone with Lawrence, it changed my whole thought process. And I knew what my mother was saying in my ear, because she's a Christian and she's speaking those words as well, what Lawrence spoke, but it was his words that spoke to me so clear. He's like, you know, and I don't know if my mother called him, because at that time, everybody was calling to check in. So she was probably like, look, somebody needs to talk to Tracy. I don't know. She's all over the place. But he had this conversation with me, and he said, you know, Tracy, Darren was born this way for a reason. He said, and he is part of this family, and we're going to love him just like all the other children we have here. And he said, the Lord don't give you no more than you can handle and bear, and you got this. He's like, and everybody's got your back.
Yes.
You know, and everybody calling up to the NICU, because you back then you called into the NICU and had to walk to the phone on the wall because they didn't have it next to the bed. So I was always having to walk up to the phone, because so everybody was calling and trying to speak the same language to me, and was my cousins, my aunties, my mother, everybody was speaking it. Yeah. So it wasn't until I was processing, and I had to understand, like, this baby was given to me for a reason.
That's right. So
I have to figure out like how to get through this. And I just changed my mindset. I just knew that this is my baby, and it's going to be successful. This outcome is going to be successful, right? So I'm still 21 thinking like this, and I'm just like, and from there, Kelly, you know, I just kept walking, thinking like that, right? I would never forget taking Darren for an appointment to Boston with his neurologist, because my friends used to sometimes say, like, they say, how come he reads, or how come he knows these words? And I say, because he just knows it. Or if I tell him something, he would remember it. Or if I say spell this, he would just remember it, right, Kelly? And then around my room, I would just have flashcards with words that Darren would read, and then I would not just read, spell. So I went and I said to Dr. Hellman, Darren does abnormal stuff. Like, and he says abnormal things for a little 1.5-year-old, because this was when he's still small. So that's when he said to me, Tracy, I want you to understand that Darren is probably going to be exceptionally intelligent, because remember, his learning quickly. He is just, first of all, he's just exceptionally smart, right? So he said, the shunt don't make him no smarter. He's going to be a smart boy. And right now, if something like he's not walking at 1, he's not, you know, so maybe his brain is making up or going extra for, you know, and he's just picking up on everything. He's sucking up everything, right? And he's just so smart at 1.5, 2, 3. Darren was so smart and above the average level of learning for the age that he was. And it was known, everybody, when he went to primary school, you know, Darren was on us the whole way through, and then was even at one point asked to skip a year, and I was just like, no, let's keep him where he is. I'm not trying to put no more pressure on him, right? That was when he was really small. And we just went on through. He went through middle school and high school. He did public education. He went to Prospect Preschool, West Pembroke, Delwood, and Cedar Bridge Academy. And then went up to the Bermuda College, and then overseas to Georgia State.
beautiful.
Right? So he's just open. He was always open to learn. And even when he first got his little forearm crutches, you couldn't stop him. I mean, at first it was like paranoia for me, right?
How old was he when he got the crutches?
Maybe like 4. I think he went to primary school with him.
Yeah.
He went to, he was clocking wrong, girl. He clocked wrong there. He was clocking if there's crutches. Everybody knew Darren was coming.
Exactly.
It just became the norm afterwards, and then you block it out and you're like, okay, it's just normal. Then, but he was very young when he started using forearm crutches. First he used the walker. Yeah. And then he was quick to get rid of that. As soon as he learned about forearm crutches, and he was just going. Yeah.
Because definitely when I had him at 11, it's like maybe for one day you notice that this child has a disability, but then you don't see it anymore.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's like Darren's just like everybody else. You say line up, he's in the line too.
Absolutely.
You say come on, we're going this place, and he's right there, and it's never like putting limitations on himself. He's just gonna do it, and he'll ask you for help if he needs help, but he's just gonna do it first.
Yes.
And
that's with everything. I would never forget that we were at a cricket game in St. David's, and it was this slide, and you had to go all the way up the steps, and I'm turned around and my aunt is having a heart attack because he's getting up this slide, but behind him was his cousin going up behind him. But why are you going up those steps? And I'm just like, oh my God. So guess what? He slid down the slide and it was high because it was like at St. David's Primary, that slide was high.
Yes.
And he didn't stop for the day.
Yeah.
And then when you looked, his cousin obviously wouldn't go up the slide all those times with him. When I looked, he was doing it by himself. So it took away my fear. So a lot of the times when Darren does something, he just has to do it once to show me he can do it, and then he forgoes.
Yes.
I always have fear. I walk with fear because I always say, okay, will that do something to him? Can he? You know, can he? It's always that question, especially because when you have a disabled son, you act like you don't want to put him in no harm's way.
Yeah.
Like you don't want him to be harmed. Like, can he do this? Is he going to be safe?
Yes.
And once he shares me he can do it, okay, and then I just always thought he was sensible, right? So he's sensible. He knows if he goes up there, he can do it. Because if not, then he's not going to go. So in life, he taught me. He just shared me, Mama, like, I'm got this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to show you I could do these things or whatever, you know. And I was, was instilled in him that, Darren, you can do anything you want to do. Anything. Sometimes you're just not going to be able to do it as fast as anyone else. Just like with his degree, right? You're going to get your degree. And you're going to make sure that you're successful. I always knew, driving to West Pembroke, it was just a saying every morning. And I use certain words because if parents lick their children. Well, I didn't lick Darren, right? Because I couldn't lick a little boy that's disabled or whatever. But he heard some words. I'd be like, don't get out that school and muck around. You need to have your education because you're going to be to college. Every day he's hearing this driving to West Pembroke. Every day is probably hearing it at Dowwood. No, at Cedar Bridge. I stopped driving him to school in S2 because one day my friend said to me, and she had hurt my feelings when she said it. She said, Tracy, you're too overprotective, and I think that Darren should catch the bus to school. And I said, why? We live in the same house. I work in the same building that he goes to school.
Right.
Why would he have to catch the bus? He could just ride away with me.
Right.
Like, and she's looking at me like straight face. She's like, because he's at the age where he needs independence. And I was looking at her like, what?
Like, is me independent already?
What are you saying? Who does that to their child? Like, who makes them catch the bus when we live in the same house? Right? So it was funny. But then I did. I said, Darren, you're going to catch the bus to school. And you know what he said?
Response?
Okay. And I was like blown away that he didn't say, what you mean? Like, right, we live in the same house. How come I can't go for the same car as you? So I was like shocked. So the first time I took him to the bus stop and I had pulled to the side and I let him off, and then I went and turned into where the St. George's playground is in Wellington. I turned in there to pull out so the bus can now go and I can drive behind the bus because I was going to drive behind the bus to make sure nobody bothered him or make sure everything was okay, right? It was the Cedar Bridge bus. Yeah. And I just wanted to make sure he is okay. So I'm there telling the bus driver stops. And she's like, I'm like, no, you go ahead, ma'am. She's like, no. And I'm like, no, go ahead, ma'am. She's like, so that was the Lord telling me, this driver is not letting you need to go, and Darren's gonna be fine. So he came to me, and in the hall, they were like, Miss Trott, we need to talk to you. So I said, okay. So, and I'm there up at Cedar Bridge, I speak to everybody. I'm friendly with all the boys, so I'm like, okay. So they're standing there, and I'm like, what happened? So they're like, so they were looking at, so then one boy says, yeah, what got an issue with you? So I said, well, what's the issue? They were like, what got an issue if you making Darren catch the bus when he lives in the same house as you? Why does he have to catch the bus to school? So I said to them, well, if I want Darren to be independent and go up maybe get the bus to the Bermuda College, or even when he goes goes overseas to school, then he's gonna have to take public transportation. So they look, and they're like, And I could see the look on their face, right? And they're like, they didn't think of that. So one boy said, yo, you're right. And they start shaking their head like that. And I was just like, yeah. But I walked away smiling because I'm saying, I'm just repeat what my good friend India told me, right? Because she really got on me. And I'm like, you boys need to understand that. And I'm telling them, right? And they're like, right. I was like walking off smiling. But that were me 2 weeks ago when she was telling me. I was very disturbed that my good friends telling me, make him catch the bus. But it was one of the best things that Darren I could have done was release any hold on Darren and let him be free.
Yeah.
I let him be free. I never rode him. We worked in the same building. I said to Darren one day, because he's extremely good at math, I said, Darren, why don't you become a math teacher? And he's listening to me. I said, because if you could become a math teacher, we need math teachers here at Cedar Bridge. I said, we can come school together, have lunch together, and drive home together. I said, that would be awesome. And Kelly, when I turned to look at his face by the time I said, that would be awesome, he's like, No.
I'm horrified, Mom.
But was serious about it, and I always know when he's serious, it's a straight no. That's it. Don't ask again. Nobody look in his face, and I'm like, oh, I didn't think it was all so bad. It was until I went to school the next day and was saying to my colleagues in student services, oh, this is what I told Darren. He should come be a math teacher. We work and eat and all that together. And they're like, and the look on their face, they were like, would you want to do that? And I was like, I'm cool. I'm like a cool mama, right? I was like, when you look at it, yeah, he's right. I wouldn't want to be riding around my mom and be with her all day. So once I processed all of that, it was good. But yeah, Darren has really been a blessing, right? He was being born with spina bifida. Now I know 30 years later, Kelly, why I was given that assignment.
Yes. Tell us why.
Darren has really become so successful in life. And it's because of his guidance, everything nurturing, everything that was poured into him. He has had a village that has surrounded me and him and been able to assist me, and his life's been sort of running smooth, or, I haven't had much difficulty with Darren. And he's been good. He's just become very successful in life.
Yes.
But I look at this right now and I say, it's a lot. You release all of the guilt. You release all of the why me. You release all of the, was it my fault? You release all of that when you know that when we have children, whether they're born with disabilities, special needs of any kind, or behavioral issues, it's given to you for a reason. But this challenge is for a reason.
Yes.
That was a challenge for me. So,
how do you think it shaped you?
Yeah.
Because it does shape you.
It does shape you.
They give it. I 100% agree that people are put in your life for reasons.
For a reason,
right?
Yes.
And a lot of times it's really to shape who you are as a person, right?
Yeah. I would say, if you know my job for the ministry and the type of students I work with, and I think it's balanced. Darren balances my life right out. He's calm, he's humble, he's just happy, all of that. And then, on the other hand, Kelly, I work with students who have come with a lot of challenges in all areas in different ways. And I say, he balances me right out throughout this career that I've had working with these students, and they come high risk at times. And then I go home to a child that has a disability and, is very mild, and he helps me to balance out, because a lot of times I think if I didn't have Darren, I probably wouldn't be able to do the job I do, because I'm a hothead, and then I have to work with these students, and then I probably have been going off on them in a whole different way.
Right.
But Darren, having him helps me to stay calm and process and just be able to get through anything I get through anything, Kelly. When I'm going through something bad, or I'm dealing with a student, because whenever I have students, they know about Darren. It's important for me to teach my students about Darren, because they can't come with no excuses. Darren don't give no excuses. He just challenges everything, gets through everything in life. And so I use him with my students. So they know that if I'm saying Darren, calling him Darren, it's just serious, can't come with no excuses. And I've seen a lot of students using Darren's story with my students, a lot of success.
Yes.
A lot of success. Because if they're not in learning support, I want them on honors. And if I know that you're on honors and I can get the parents to speak the same language as me and we getting them on honors, I use Darren. Darren has got a disability. Yes, it's got crutches. I might even hold up a picture, because I need the students I'm working with to understand it's no excuses. And they all my case with at Cedar Bridge, it's no excuses. Don't come with the excuses. Look, you know what I'm saying? And they get the message.
I would think that they realize from you too that it's truth in what you say, because you live it.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
Is that challenges may seem insurmountable, but you can always look at them in a way that's positive, right? And just keep chunking at it until the job gets done, right?
Yes.
And some people could talk that talk, but when they don't see anything behind it, it's harder for young people to really believe, oh, you're just saying this because you're a teacher, basically, or you're just saying this because you're an adult. But it's listen, I am living proof that I have had tasks that some people would fall out from.
Yep.
And I have stuck with it, and I continue to stick with it, and I'm letting you know. That's I think that's what your story brings to the table too. It's we're all gonna have some challenges, some bigger than others. But
and even along Darren's journey, we've had challenges, right? Whether it's medical, and it's come through like a champ. I mean, we've had scary situations where one time my mother took Darren overseas to Christmas time to Memphis, Tennessee to visit my sister, and Darren's shunt malfunctioned in Memphis. But in my mother's bag, I always wrote the doctor's names, the numbers, everywhere for the Boston location, right? Tufts New England Medical. And I remember her calling me and saying, Tracy, something's wrong with Darren. Like, something's wrong. So I said, my mother knew to check for signs of the shunt malfunctioning. And she said, I think it's his shunt. I said, get the note out of the bag or whatever. And I said, put it in your purse. And my brother-in-law, Lawrence, knew what hospital to take him to, because you can't just take Darren to any hospital. He has to go to a hospital that caters to what specifically he's dealing with.
Yeah.
So they took him there, and the neurologist that he saw said to my mother, give me the information, who's his neurologist, all of that, because obviously, he's got a neurologist. He comes in with this medical need, he's got a neurologist. So my mother said his neurologist named Dr. Kyle Howman, he's in Boston, Tufts New England Medical. Well, his neurologist says to my mother, the neurologist in Memphis says to my mother, oh my God, I know Kyle Howman. He taught me.
Oh, wow.
So my mother immediately felt at ease. She's like, oh my God, did you know this Dr. Kyle Howman taught this neurologist? And so I was like, okay, cool. But when I got there, he was able to tell me in person, because I flew out of Bermuda immediately and went to Memphis to meet up with my mom and Darren. And he spoke to Dr. Howman, and he was like, why is Darren in Memphis? It's like, because his family's got some family down here. He's like, okay. And he told him what to do. And so it's been a journey, right? Because that was the second time Darren's shunt had malfunctioned that he was in Memphis, and neurologists happened to know his neurologist. But Darren never really got treated in Bermuda. He it was a time in the hospital that I took Darren to the King Edward, and I remember being in the room, and I could pick up something's wrong. The look on their face, the nurses and the doctor in the room were just, I could see something was wrong. And so finally a doctor came over to me and said, Miss Trott, well, I'm not coming up with we're not finding any information on Darren. And I said, well, you should have came to me earlier. I said, I could tell something's wrong. You wouldn't. He doesn't come to King Edward. My son goes to Tufts New England Medical, call them. And I could just see the relief on the doctor's face. It's like, because you think it's got special needs, that he has to come to the hospital, or it's going to be a long running record on him. No, not the case. My son, every year to every other year when it got moved, was seen by Tufts New England Medical team in Boston. So his servicing or his yearly checkups were done on a regular. So they didn't have any information, and he was a healthy child. He's healthy, so we didn't have to come to the hospital. He ate very well. He is super healthy, and to this day super healthy. So I'm like, I was very happy to know that that neurologist knew Dr. Howman, and then when Darren's shunt malfunctioned, before that, he went to the hospital, and I would never forget that they didn't know what to do. So I was comparing the difference with that time too, I guess, because it's in the States already, and we got the neurologist team at that hospital. But when Darren's shunt malfunctioned and we didn't have a neurologist in Bermuda on that day or time, it was a scary situation. We had to get an ambulance, and by the time that ambulance gets in, where's things going to be? You have so many thoughts going through your head, especially as you're being briefed that, if fluid sits on the head, it can cause damage with the brain, and all of this important facts you're being made aware of as this is happening. And of course, you're nervous or scared, and you're like, oh my goodness. So I would never forget that when his shunt malfunctioned and we didn't have a doctor here in Bermuda, Darren ended up in the ICU. So while in ICU, the air ambulance was taking a very long time to come. So the ICU doctor had reached out to Darren's neurologist in Boston. So while Darren was in the ICU NICU, the doctor came up and had informed me that he had reached out to Darren's doctor, Dr. Kyle Howman, and of course that team was already in Boston waiting for Darren to arrive in Boston. And of course doctors can only stay on shift for a certain amount of hours. So he was getting ready to come off shift, but he was very concerned that on the length of time that it was taken for the air ambulance to get to Bermuda. And I remember the doctor coming, and he said that the ICU unit's closed down and nobody else can come into it. So you're like, okay. So all my family had to come into a room. People who was in the NICU visiting family members had to come out and whatever. So it wasn't until we got the ambulance came in, and these guys come in and they got these uniforms or suits on, and they find out what's going on, and they took Darren, and was a doctor on the air ambulance, and they swiftly move us to the airport, and they take us on the air ambulance. So once we got to Tufts New England Medical, it's a different team of neurologists on. So I would never forget that when we entered Darren's name was on a board, so they knew he was coming. So the doctor, the neurologist that was on him, getting ready to take him into surgery, was so upset. He couldn't even like contain it. He said, I'm so upset. He's like, you don't understand how I feel right now. It was too long. They waited too long to get him. What was the hold up? So he had let out some of his, his a normal person, right?
Yeah.
That's his feelings. So it wasn't until after the surgery and Darren coming back around that we were able to know that if it was damage or any damage done, and it was no damage. So I think the neurologists were relieved, and I will never forget the ICU doctor in Bermuda called me in Boston, and he said, he cried. He said, Miss Trotter, I had never in my life done a surgery. And he said to me, Darren, let me go back to Bermuda. I entered the ICU to Darren, and it was just a little thin needle sticking out of his head that was keeping the fluid down or whatever. He was just laying there at peace. He was just, he could hear what I was saying. He could respond in whatever, but he was unconscious.
Wow.
So it wasn't until he said, yeah, I had never done that before, and Dr. Kyle Howman coached me over the phone. He said, we'll run out of time. I need you to get, He said, I've never done this. He said, what are you going to do today?
Yeah.
And by the time I got in there, he had finished the surgery that Dr. Howman had helped him with. And yeah, Darren was like resting peacefully.
Wow.
When he got to Boston, they fixed him on up, and now Darren has a shunt now that will last him a lifetime. Back then it was new. Dr. Howman, obviously, and other neurologists were still, I guess, testing and doing whatever they needed to do for their findings. But Darren now has a shunt that it seems that will be lifetime use, because it will grow with him as he finished growing. So right now it's just doing its job.
Yes.
And it's not been any issues.
Great.
So yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yes.
So you want to move on to finishing Georgia State.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like for you? First, then you can tell us about what it was like for Darren. What was it like for you?
I am feeling how I felt, because I do that. I acknowledge the feelings. I allow myself to acknowledge them.
Amen.
And that feeling was so great. Because in my next or in a future vlog, I have the recordings of Darren walking across the stage and then I'll record of how excited I was. But I honestly felt like it's the end. This is the end. My son made it through college.
Yes.
Every word I spoke to him many times traveling to West Pembroke, Delwood Middle. This is it. This is what I talked about. I manifested, and I believe in manifestation. And I manifested, and you put out there what you want, and the universe knows what to bring you.
Yes.
It brought us a diploma in actuarial science from Georgia State, and
and that's not easy to come by.
No, no. So yes, I was very happy for Darren. That's definitely an accomplishment that I know that he talked about and his whole life. So seeing him walk across that stage, it was awesome.
Yes. So when you say
Awesome.
you come to the end, it's like we've come to the end of his academic journey.
Yes, academic journey.
And now
yes.
it's a new beginning as the new adult, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Yes. So
yes,
talk
yes,
about
yes.
Darren and
Well, once he came back, and he had received a scholarship from the Ministry of Education, and he got it for 4 years, and outside of that, anything else he needed, I was able to provide. But he made it through. He graduated and then got full time after his 2-year contract. So Darren's working full time for that company.
beautiful.
Yes,
I love it.
thank you.
I'm like I see Darren still as my 11-year-old.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And I see him as a man too, right?
Yeah.
But as the 11-year-old, I'm saying to myself, I can respect. He never saw himself giving as many speeches.
Yes,
Yes.
it's definitely
Even
giving
in the
speeches.
last 3
though.
years, right?
Yes, yes.
It's like I didn't see this coming.
No, right?
So how does he feel about that? Because he has the motivational speaking.
First of all, he's not been nervous.
Yeah.
He spoke at Cedar Bridge Academy's graduation, and he went up there and was not nervous at all. I think he knows
Yeah.
this is what he's meant to do.
Yes.
He
Tell my
knows.
story.
He knows this is got to tell his story. He has
Yes.
the blueprint.
Yeah. They know what to do, and they don't know we'll have a village, right?
Yeah.
So even if you're not related, there's still a village that's waiting for you.
Yep, absolutely,
mean?
absolutely.
They need
And
you.
To anybody out there who has a child with a disability or behavior or anything that's somewhat different, then we must remember that for a reason we're dealing with this, or we're
Yes.
going through this, or it was given to us.
Yes.
And like again, years later, I see why
Yes.
I was given Darren.
Yes.
And I'm thankful and grateful. Yes. So at this time, I just want to, as I'm winding up, give some thank yous to Darren's doctors and the teams throughout his lifespan of 30 years. And I first want to start with Dr. Heilman at Tufts Medical Center, Darren's neurologist, and the neurology team, the neurology surgical team, neurology team, past and present, as they are very awesome and been a big part of Darren's life. So thank you, Dr. Kyle Heilman. Dr. Klubber is Darren's urologist, or was Darren's urologist. He's now retired from Tufts Medical Center in Boston. So thank you, Dr. Klubber. Dr. Ask was part of Dr. Klubber's team. Thank you, Dr. Ask. And his current urologist in Bermuda is now Dr. Mack. So big thank you to Dr. Mack at King Edward Memorial Hospital for taking Darren on. It's been awesome. And a big thank you, who I cannot forget, is Dr. Stephen West at We Care Pediatrics. Dr. Stephen West was the pediatrician who took Darren on at birth and was his pediatrician up to the age of 18. Without Dr. West, we would not have been able to come back to Bermuda like I talked about in the first few weeks or months of Darren's life. So I want to thank Dr. Stephen West at We Care Pediatrics and the team there at We Care Pediatrics. Dr. Dickinson is Darren's dentist from first time he got his teeth done. Dr. Dickinson and his team is Darren's dentist. And a big thank you to Dr. Carlton Jones, who's Darren's current GP at Island Health Services. So I just want to give a big thank you to the team, Darren's Village of Doctors. They correspond or have corresponded whenever need be. And I just want to say a big thank you to all of the doctors that Darren's had in his lifespan. I would also like to thank my GP, Dr. Harvey, down at Island Health, because without Dr. Harvey, she's kept me sane a lot of the times that I walk into her office and I'll be able to express myself, whether it's good or bad. And lots of times my talk of Darren comes up and she's able to give me suggestions or even direct me. Even though she's my doctor, she still gives me input on my son, Darren, and which road I should be taking, medical road for Darren. So thank you to the team of doctors who I mentioned, and any other doctor if I forgot, sorry, but yeah, I just want to say thank you at this time. Thank you. At this time, I just want to say thank you to Ms. Kelly Dunville for taking this time out to speak about my walk with Darren. Again, Ms. Dunville taught Darren, and we're now co-workers, and she's also my friend. So I just thank her for taking the time out to do this talk with me. It's been going on for a few months now. We will discuss me discussing Darren's walk, especially because we know how much is needed. And so today I'm sitting with Kelly for the first time. I haven't sat with anyone yet to have this discussion, but I look forward to sitting with individuals in the future to have many more discussions. It should be talked about. Darren's a success, and we're gonna get it out there. So anybody who needs to have a conversation with me or even discuss their child who has spina bifida or any other disability, or any parent that's going through any feelings or suffering because their child was born with a disability, can reach out to me and let's have a chat. Again, thank you so much, Kelly. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I just want to say thank you to my nephew, Cyree, who's been here with me as well, doing the recordings, and will continue to walk the walk with Darren and I to make sure our vlogs are professional. So thank you, Cyree.